Sabbath day. Shalom, shalom. Welcome back. Study the Bible, not the sermon TV. This is Mehalam, the slow Genesis walkthrough. If this is your first time here, welcome to where we've come to understand strange Bible stories. If you move by something you see, hear, or read while you're here, please smash that like button, hit the subscribe, and then slide on the notifications bell. If you're a regular here, please drop me a comment so I can shout you out on the next episode. Drop me a comment so I can shout you out on the next episode. Now, Psalms chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Now, this sounds a lot like Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. So let's check that out real quick before we get going. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Yeah, I know that we understand by now that there's symmetry in the Bible between stories. But today, we want to look at the symmetry between books. Joshua and Psalms match in this way because they are both the beginning of a group of scrolls. Not just the beginning of a book. Not just the beginning of the book of Joshua and the beginning of the book of Psalms. No, the books themselves are the beginning of a collection of books. Like Genesis is the beginning of the Torah or the Torah. Like in this illustration I found on the internet. And so then through this repetition, we can tell without any doubt that the scrolls are connected, and therefore the collection of scrolls are also connected, very obviously. Therefore, today I wanted to take a brief moment and further make the case that Genesis shows us the design and structure of the entire Bible so that we will know what it's doing. All right, Genesis chapter 2 through chapter 5. We must ask ourselves every step of the reading, what is meant and intended by the authors who formed the final shape of the TaNak. As far as we can tell, the TaNak being what we now call the Old Testament. For the authors of the Bible, Genesis 1 through Genesis 11 formed an introduction to the entire TaNak. In this section of scripture, we find the basic themes, vocabularies, plot elements that's going to be developed throughout the rest of the collection. And in this video, we are continuing the conversation that we've been having just about the first scene in Genesis and how it opens and closes chapter 1, verse 1 and chapter 2, verse 1, and how the understanding that we got from that knowledge is how we should view the Bible as a whole. For example, when Jesus alludes to the order of the Hebrew Bible, he assumes a three-part design. Let's check it out. Luke 24. In Jesus' post-resurrection Bible study he had with the disciples, now turned apostles. And it says, and he said unto them, these are the words which I spake to you when I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which are written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms, concerning me. Now, the setup of the TaNak is not the same setup as the King James Old Testament. It's all the same books, but they're arranged differently. In King James, after Judges, the books are arranged by length and nothing else. But I want to look at something else the Messiah said to clue us in. That's Luke 11. Let's do verse 50 and 51. That the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zechariah. You know, the one who died between the altar and the temple. Verily I say unto you, it shall be required of this generation. This statement is recognizing the structure of the TaNak if you know about it and can see it. Abel was murdered by Cain in Genesis chapter 4, very early in the first book of the Bible. And Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, was murdered by Joash in 2 Chronicles 24, which is almost at the end of the Old Testament. Corresponding to the TaNak's order, the three-part shape of the Hebrew Bible isn't simply a matter of arrangement. Rather, the books themselves have been designed to fit into these particular shapes. If you look at how the major sections begin and end, you'll find intentional design clues at the beginning and ending of these sections. Let's check it out. The first scene, the TaNak, Hebrew acronym, T for Torah, No vowels in Hebrew. So the middle section symbolized by the N for Nevi'im. So let's look at the final sentences of the Torah and the opening sentences of the Nevi'im. It's a lot to read here, so I try to illustrate it. Deuteronomy 34:10-12. Anticipation of a coming Moses like prophet who was prophesied but never came. Joshua 1, God's appointed leader who is patterned after Moses in every way, will lead the people into the promised land, must meditate on the Torah day and night in order to find success. And then, second scene, we have the final sentences of the Nevi'im, which are the prophets, and the opening sentence of the Ketuvim, which are the writings. First, we have the end of the book of Malachi. In chapter 4, there's an anticipation of a coming Elijah-like prophet who will call the people back to the Torah and restore the hearts of Israel before the day of the Lord. Then in Psalms chapter 1 and chapter 2, the righteous one will be vindicated in the final judgment is the one who meditates in the Torah day and night to find success, like Joshua. In chapter 2, this righteous one is the future messianic king from the line of David, who is appointed by God to do what? Rule the nations and overcome the evil one once and for all. Lastly, I want to talk about an analogy that I saw on the internet that might be helpful to some of us. It's the idea and image of a photo mosaic. As you can see, the main image is very clearly a woman in a certain pose, with both hands touching parts of her head and face. But as you zoom in, you quickly realize that each section of the image that you can obviously see is itself a separate image, important not just to her life, but to her story. And somehow all of these individual moments in life crafted in such a way as to produce this very obvious image of this woman simply sitting. And so now what I'm telling you is that the Bible is the same thing as this photo mosaic. Jesus is the woman that the Bible is very obviously showing us. However, when you zoom into the book of Deuteronomy, or you zoom into the story of Rahab, or you zoom into the story of Nebuchadnezzar, or you zoom into the story of Job, or you zoom into the story of Jonah, we see a separate picture with its own story and context, which could not at all be related to the Messiah on the first read. But again, when you zoom back out, you can see all of these stories are strategically placed here in order to make the portrait similar to what we see here. But this is the key point. It is this new overall context of the final portrait that gives each individual picture meaning when viewed in light of the whole thing. Regardless of the meaning of any individual picture, the entitled photo mosaic now the proper frame of reference for understanding all of the smaller pieces. Hopefully somebody got something out of that. Check us out next week when, Lord willing, we still gonna be chilling at Genesis chapter 1, and we gonna continue with the repetition and how recognizing repeated words helps to inform us on what the scriptures are trying to get across. But for right now, we up.